Shalom, this is Sister Yara, and we're back with another Torah portion. This message for today is entitled Hate and Envy, the Other Side of Favor. And we're looking at the life of Yosef, and this Torah portion, I'm going to start off in Genesis 37, but I'm kind of putting together a few of the Torah portions from the last week going into the next week. Genesis 37 through 47 is really talking about the life of Joseph, the life of Yosef, and we're moving into the children of Israel when they were getting ready to go into Egypt. But for this portion, I'm going to start at Genesis 37. We're going to focus in on that particular chapter. And so I'm going to start off reading at verse 1. And it says, And Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. This is the genealogy of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the young man was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. So he was with his stepbrothers in a sense. Well, not stepbrothers, but his half brothers. The brothers from his father's other wives. So it says that Joseph brought an evil report of them to his father. Okay, so he done snitched on them about something, evidently. And in verse 3 it says, And Yisrael loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe. So Joseph had the favor of his father. He had favor on him from his father. And it says in verse 4, But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. So when they saw that their father favored him above the rest of them, they hated him, is what the scripture says. They were not able to speak peaceably to him. And then in verse 5 it says, And Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers. So he tells his brothers this dream that he had. And it says, So they hated him even more. So they already hated him because of the favor that he had on him from the father, from Israel. So now Joseph is having these dreams from the father, from the Most High. These dreams are coming to him, and he's telling it to his brothers, and now they're hating him even more. So in verse 6, it says that he said to them, Please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up. And see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brother said to him, Shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? And it says, So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. So Joseph is having more dreams, and in this dream, it appears that he's saying that he's going to rule over his brothers. So it says that they hated him even more than they already hated him. Number one, they hated him for his dreams, for the fact that he was having these dreams from the Most High. So now, not only do you have favor with our father Yisrael, our father Jacob, now you also have faith with the Most High, Yahuwah, and are having these dreams. And not only that, in these dreams, the words that you're telling us is saying that the vision you're getting is that you're going to rule over us. So it says they hated him even more. And he dreamed still another dream in verse 9, and related it to his brothers, and said, See, I have dreamed another dream, and see, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bow down to me. And he related it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him, and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I, and your brothers, indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And then in verse 11, it says something different. It says, And his brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. So now it says that it went from saying that his brothers hated him to saying now that his brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. So in verse 12 it says, His brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Yisrael said to Joseph, Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I send you to them. So he said to him, Here I am. And he said to him, Please go and see if it is well with your brothers, and well with the sheep, and bring back word to me. So he sent him out to the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and see, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, What do you seek? And he said, I am seeking my brothers. Please inform me where they are feeding their sheep. And the man said, They have left here, for I heard them saying, Let us go towards Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers, and found them in Dothan. And they saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they plotted against him to kill him. And they said to each other, See, this master of dreams is coming. Now then, come and let us now kill him, and throw him into some pit, and shall say, Some wild beast has devoured him. Let us then see what comes of his dreams. So when the opportune time came, these brothers that had hated him and that envied him began to plot against him to take the opportunity to kill him. This is interesting. So this is something that often rises up when a person increases in favor with Yah and in favor with man. This is a pattern that we've already seen as we've been going through the book of Genesis. We've seen this on at least 3 occasions. We started off in Genesis 4, where we dealt with Cain and Abel, and we know that Cain gave an offering to the Most High Yah, and his offering was looked favorably upon by the Most High. But then Abel had gave his offering, and his offering was not accepted by the Most High. So Cain was angry. He was wroth. He was hot. He burned with anger. And the Most High let him know that, if you do what's right, everything will be all good. But if you don't, sin is crouching at your door. You have to rule over it, or it's going to have you. So he apparently did not deal with what was going on inside of him, this anger, this envy that was going on inside of Cain. And when the opportunity presented itself, and his brother Abel was out in the field, Cain rose up against him and killed him. Okay, so we see this, that Cain had some anger, he had some hate, he had some envy of the favor that the Most High had over his brother's offering and not over his, and it's led to murder. Okay, so we saw this again in in one of our recent studies in Genesis 27, in dealing with Esau and Jacob. So we saw in Genesis chapter 27 that after the blessing, the birthright and the blessing have been given to Jacob, Esau, it says in verse 41 that he hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father draw near, then I'm going to kill my brother Jacob. So because Jacob received this blessing, received this favor that Esau felt like belonged to him, he hated Jacob because of it. Okay, because of this, he hated it, and he said it in his heart that he was going to kill his brother because an opportune time had presented itself, because the days of the mourning for his father's drawing near. So he's like, listen, my father's going to be passed, and once this happens, I'm going to off my brother. I'm going to kill Jacob. So this is what he was dealing with in his heart. Okay, and we know that did not happen. He did not have that opportunity to be able to lay hands on Jacob. And there was a change that happened, but this change did not last, and it was not something that endured throughout the generations of Edom. Okay, so we saw this again recently in Genesis chapter 30 in a little different form. We saw this with Rachel and Leah And in chapter 30, we see that Rachel had bore Jacob no children. So it says that Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I'm going to die." So we see something a little bit different here in this example. We see where uh, Rachel was envious of her sister because her sister had given Jacob children already. So there was an envy that she had for her sister. But this time, the death that was proposed here was not that she was going to kill her sister, but that she felt like she was going to die. She turned that anger towards herself, or turned that the fruit of that envy towards herself, and she felt like, man, I'm just going to die. Okay. So we still see that this envy and this hatred turns into death. It leads to death of one form or another. It leads to murder, or manifest in you feeling like you're going to die, whatever the case may be. And in this instance, in verse 2 of chapter 30 in Genesis, it says, Jacob's displeasure burned against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of Elohim? Who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So he reminds her that, we're going to talk about this as we go throughout this, talking about envy and hatred, but he reminds her that it is the will of the Most High that things are the way that they are. Okay, so it was the Most High's doing to withhold her the fruit of her womb for his purposes. So a lot of times when it comes to envying what somebody else has, our envy is turned towards them, but we also are pitting ourselves against the Most High and His will and His desire and His purposes, and thinking that we should have something that we don't have, or that He doesn't intend us to have in a particular timing. Okay. So we see this pattern that has been showing itself throughout the scriptures up to this point. And now we see it again with Joseph and his brothers. Okay, so we just talked about the 12 tribes, or the 12 sons of Jacob, which the 12 tribes come out of. And so now we're seeing these brothers who are the heads of these 12 tribes, who will be the heads of these 12 tribes, and we see that they have envy, they have hatred, they have these things brewing amongst them in their midst. Okay, so we're dealing with real emotions and real things of the heart amongst our patriarchs of our people. All right, so we see the same type of mindset that we saw with Cain, the same type of mindset and spirit that we saw with Esau. We see this same mindset within the brothers who make up the 12 sons of Jacob, will be the 12 sons, the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Okay? Alright, so Messiah, we're going to look at Matthew chapter 5. And the Messiah Yahusha pretty much spoke on this idea of things that start in the heart. Okay? In chapter 21, in chapter 5, verse 21, he says that you heard it, that it was said to those of old, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that whoever is wroth with his brother without a cause shall be liable to judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. But whoever says, you fool, shall be liable to the fire of Gehenna." Okay, so he's saying that, you know the commandment says you shall not murder. Okay, so, but I'm saying to you that whoever is wroth, whoever is angry, whoever has a fire burning, wrath is the Hebrew word kara, which means to be hot, to burn, to kindle. If you get the idea of fire, how you would fan the flames, or throw wood into it or whatever to kindle it and to keep it going. So this is what the word wrath kind of means. So when you have something inside of you that you're continuing to keep going, instead of putting it to death, instead of overcoming it and forgiving, or whatever the case may be. Instead of doing that, you are allowing it to come out. All right. So he's saying that whoever nurtures hatred or nurtures envy, nurtures these things inside of themselves, this resentment inside of themselves, that you are in danger as well, just as much as the person who says you shall not murder. I mean, the person who commits murder. Okay. So because he's showing us something that we've just seen laid out in scripture. We've seen that when something starts in the heart, murder is something that starts in the heart. And whenever your inner emotions meets opportunity, you're going to more than likely manifest that thing. So before Cain killed Abel, he was nurturing that anger. That murder was in his heart. Okay, so Esau didn't get the opportunity to kill Yaakov, to murder Yaakov, but that intention and the desire went and continued through his seed. Okay, and they continued in their attempts to be able to snuff out the seed of Jacob. Okay, so these are things that we nurture, that continue. That's why he said in the next verse in this chapter in 23, he says, if then you bring your gift to the altar and then remember that your brother holds whatever against you, leave your gift there because before the altar and go first make peace with your brother and then come and offer your gift. Okay, he desires for us to be able to make peace, right? So he desires for us to not allow these things to nurture inside ourselves or inside our brothers and sisters when we know what's going on. So, this concept of what's in the heart coming out, he plays out a few times in this chapter 5 here, when he also says you should not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone looking at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Okay, so this what he's saying is whatever you're nurturing in your heart, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of opportunity. It's a matter of time and opportunity presenting itself, and then what's in your heart is what you're going to do. Your actions are going to follow what's in your heart, whatever you're nurturing within yourself. So if there are people that are murderers walking around, but they just have not come face to face with the opportunity to carry it out. But the condition of their heart towards whatever person is completely capable of carrying it out. They just haven't had that opportunity. There are adulterers walking around who have not yet committed an act of a sexual act with a person, with a married person. However, it is in their heart, and if as soon as the opportunity presents itself, they're more than willing to do it. So these things begin in the heart. And when our heart and our emotion is met up with an opportunity, that's why that says that the enemy will come back at a more opportune time. He'll wait until the perfect time and set a trap for the perfect situation to cause us to fall into it based on, what is going on and what we're nursing and nurturing within our hearts. Okay? All right, so let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 18. All right, so we're dealing with David here. David and Shaul, Dawid and Shaul, and Jonathan. All right, so King Dawid had just come back from dealing with the Philistine. He's not king yet right now. Shaul is king. And I'm going to start in verse 1. It came to be when he had ended speaking to Shaul that the being of Jonathan was knit to the being of Dawid. And Jonathan loved him as his own being. And Shaul took him that day, it would not let him return to his father's house anymore. And Jonathan and Dawid made a covenant because he loved him as his own being. So just to make a point here, that Shaul is the king and Jonathan is Shaul's son. So in the event that, Jonathan would be the successor of Dawid. Okay, he would be the one to take the throne. I'm sorry, Jonathan would be the successor of Shaul. Okay, he would be the one to take the throne after Shaul. Okay, however, we see what Jonathan's heart is towards David. And despite the fact, and if if you know the story as you go throughout, um, Jonathan's heart was towards David, and it didn't matter who, he didn't have an issue with David becoming king or taking the throne. Um, so, in contrast to what we're going to see now with Shaul. So, and Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own being. And in verse 4 it says, Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword and his bow and his girdle. Okay, so he took off all of his arraignment, all of his garments and everything, and his sword, everything, and gave it to David. Okay, so he didn't have an issue with seeing David uh, uh, have power or strength or whatever the case may be. Okay, he deferred himself to David in a way. All right, so and David went out wherever Shaul sent him. He acted wisely, and Shaul set him over the men of battle, and it was right in the eyes of all the people, and also in the eyes of Shaul's servants. And it came to be, as they came in, as David was returning from striking the Philistine, that the women came out from all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet Shaul the king with tambourines, with joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang as they danced, and said, Shaul struck his thousands, and David his 10,000s. All right, so they came back from battle, and they're like, Shaul, he got his thousands, and David his 10,000s. So apparently David was putting them down. Shaul was doing his thing too, but David was excelling above Shaul, and this was seen in the eyes of these women that are celebrating. Okay, in verse 8 it says Shaul was very wroth. Okay, we just talked about what wrath meant, right? Kara means to nurture anger, to be hot, to burn, to kindle. Okay, so we got the picture of kindling a fire. So he's keeping this thing going within himself. All right, so Shaul was very wroth, and this matter was evil in his eyes. And he said, to David they have given 10,000s, and to me they have given thousands. So what more for him except the kingdom? So Shaul was threatened by David taking the kingdom, just based off of this one thing. And in verse 9 it says, and from that day on, Shaul eyed David. So he had an evil eye towards David from this moment on. From that one little thing, when he heard that the women saying these things, it cringed inside of him just that quick. It struck him. He's like, he got an evil eye towards David. He's envious at this point, and watchful. He's afraid that this kingdom's going to be taken from him, from David. Okay, he's threatened. Okay, so in verse 10 it says, and it came to be on the next day that an evil spirit from Elohim came upon Shaul, and he prophesied inside the house while David was playing the lyre with his hand. He was playing the harp as usual, and the spirit was in the hand of Shaul. So first of all, we notice that an evil spirit was sent from the Most High Yah. The Most High Yah sent an evil spirit. Okay, and it came, and why did it come upon Shaul? From what we said just happened, what we just saw that was in Shaul's heart. So when something is in our heart that is not like Yah, an evil spirit can find place in us. That's how a person can end up committing a murder. There has to be a spirit that comes on you to do that. But that spirit finds place with the heart and the wrath, that fire that's already burning. It attaches itself to what's going on in your heart. The same with anything. We talked about adultery. That thing, when that lust is in your heart, is in your heart. Then a spirit can come and attach itself to you because of what's in your heart. So it says that the Most High sent an evil spirit. An evil spirit from Elohim came upon Shaul, and he prophesied inside the house. So even though this evil spirit comes to Shaul, Shaul still was able to prophesy. So keep note of that. And so David was playing his harp, and so he has his harp in his hand, playing, and then which probably made Shaul upset. He like, man, this guy, he's a warrior. Then he turned around, he's playing the harp. He's probably just finished, just done with Dawid. So he has a spear in his hand. So in verse 11 it says, then Shaul hurled the spear, for he said, let me strike Dawid even to the wall. But twice Dawid withdrew from his presence. So he tried to kill Dawid on the sly, on the low. He took a spear and threw it at him. Right there. Like this is where we've gone to, from him having this, from somebody saying, making Shaul feel slighted in comparison to Dawid. Now he's trying to kill Dawid for this reason. All right. So it says that Dawid withdrew from his presence, and Shaul was afraid of Dawid because Yahuwah was with him. But from Shaul he had turned away. So the Most High turned away from Shaul because of what was in his heart. All right. So, but he was with Dawid, and he knew it. Shaul wasn't stupid. He could see and knew that the Most High was with Dawid, so he feared him. That fear didn't keep him from throwing that spear. But, he had a certain level of reverence, just as Dawid had a reverence for Shaul, because he was anointed king by the Most High. So in verse 13 it says, Shaul therefore removed him from his presence and made him his commander over 1,000. So Shaul just got him out of his presence. Okay, he was like, just get out of here. Just at least be away from me. And he even elevated him. He made him commander over 1,000. To send him off. So, and he went out and came in before the people. And Dawid was acting wisely in all his ways, and Yahuwah was with him. And Shaul saw that he was acting very wisely and was afraid of him. Okay? But all Yisrael and Yehuda loved Dawid as he went out and came in before them. Okay, so Dawid was growing in favor with man, and the favor of Yahuwah was on him. So when the favor of Yah and the favor of man is on a person, a lot of times they will find themselves being hated and being envied, but at the same time not being able to be touched beyond what the Most High allows. But people will see and have hate, have envy, have fear towards the work that the Most High is doing, because they're comparing themselves. Okay. So one of the characteristics of hate. So the Hebrew word for hate is saneh. Okay, it's the word saneh. Shin, Nun, Aleph. Okay. And the Hebrew word for envy is kana. All right. Kof, Nun, Aleph. Okay. And you'll notice that both of those words possess the Nun and the Aleph. They're three Hebrew letters, and while one starts with the Sheen and one starts with Kof, they end in the Nun and the Aleph. All right. And the Nun is the sprouting seed. It continues. All right. And the Aleph is the head, the leader, the strong leader. It's the ox head. And we know that hate and envy is something that when it's kindled up, it goes from generation to generation. The Most High talks about that. We see that with Esau that we talked about earlier. It's something that continues. And so we see the connection between these two words being very closely connected, hate and envy. All right, Saneh is hate, Kana is envy. All right, so hate has a connotation of, it could mean resentment. Okay, a feeling of resentment. It's a feeling of bitterness. Okay, it could be a repulsion. Something that repulses you from a person. Like the Most High hates sin. It repulses him. It makes him want to turn away from you, or turn away from it. Okay, so it's a form of repulsion. You hate something. You don't want to be bothered with it. It's a desire for distance. So we see that Dawid was sent away by Shaul. He wanted him away from him. His hatred wanted him to distance himself. Okay, so it's something that will cause you to want to be distant. When there's a hatred towards something, you don't want to be close to it. You want it away from you. You might feel if it's in your face, then there's a bitterness that begins to take root, and it's a resentment. Okay, so these are some things that that hatred brings forth, and the feeling is the idea of being wroth. We talked about that, that fire, that hot burning kindling that you have. All right, so now I want to talk about envy and also jealousy, because in some of these translations it says envy and some it says jealousy for certain verses. All right, so but there's a, in certain instances those words can be used interchangeably, but there's a difference between the two, and sometimes we can use jealousy to mean jealous or envy, but envy has more of a distinct envy has more of a distinct and a separate meaning. Okay, so I want to look at first jealousy. So jealousy deals with, on one end of the spectrum, it's kind of a spectrum. So on one end of the spectrum, we could say it deals with zeal and it's protective. Okay, so if we look at the Most High, okay, for example, all right, in Exodus 34, what does it say in 34 verse 14? It speaks of the Most High, and it says that it talks about worshiping idols, right? And it says, you do not bow yourself to another mighty one. Okay? For Yahuwah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous El. Okay? So this is saying that the Most High is a jealous El. Okay? And when it speaks of this type of jealousy, it's speaking of a zeal, because the Most High is zealous towards his people, and it's speaking of a protective type of jealousy that is dealing with protecting his people. And I want to read something that this is a definition for kana that Jeff Benner that I thought was really really good and relevant. So it says that kana means to protect, and his commentary on this said that this is a child root, means to guard. Okay, it's often translated as jealous. And it says a bird watches over the eggs and young with jealousy. Okay, and will defend them from the enemy and prevent any other bird from entering the nest, just as a bird watches over her eggs from predators. Yah also watches over his children in his nest, protecting them from predators, other gods. Okay, so it's defined as protection, and the reference here says that this is the picture that the Hebrews had in this verse here with in Exodus 34:14. All right, it says that he is a do not worship other gods. Okay, do not bow yourself to other mighty ones. For Yahuwah, whose name is jealous, whose name is Kana, is a jealous, a Kana El. Okay, so we get the picture of zeal and protectiveness. Okay, and then as we go down, and that can be true for humans too, but as we go down the spectrum, it also kind of crosses over into possessiveness. A lot of times when you're feeling jealousy. So it's a possessiveness, and it really stems down to a fear of loss. You're feeling jealous. So jealousy, in order to be jealous, okay, it's dealing most of the time with something that you possess. So it's something that is yours. Okay. And this is a big difference between jealousy and envy, but it's something that is rightfully yours that something on the outside is becoming a threat to. So there's a fear of loss. There's a fear of either that you're going to lose something. You're afraid that your significant other, your spouse, is looking towards somebody else, or that somebody else has their eye on them, and your possessiveness kicks in, and your fear of loss kicks in, and that jealousy comes up. All right, or it could be a zeal or protectiveness, like over your children, when you see something that's not right. But so it can go from one end to the other. So we see in Numbers chapter 5, right? There's an actual law in the Torah, because jealousy is not necessarily a sin. All right. So when we get over into envy, we're going to look at the difference. But in jealousy, in Numbers chapter 5, there's a law in the Torah that's called the law of jealousy. Okay, the Torah of jealousy. So this is Numbers chapter 5, and around verse 11, it says to speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man's wife turns aside and has committed a trespass against him, and a man has intercourse with her, and it is hidden from his eyes, from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught. And the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled herself. Or a spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself. So we have two things here. So either the wife has defiled herself, and the husband catches wind of it or suspects it, and he's, becomes jealous over her because of that. Or, she hasn't done anything, but a spirit of jealousy just comes over him, and he thinks that she may have defiled herself when it's not true. So it could be either true or not true. It says, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest, and he shall bring the offering for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour. He is not to pour oil on it or put frankincense on it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing crookedness to remembrance. And the priest shall bring her near, and shall make her stand before Yahuwah. And the priest shall take set apart water in an earthen vessel, and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the dwelling place, and put it into the water. And the priest shall make the woman stand before Yahuwah, and shall uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy, while the priest holds in his hand the bitter water that brings a curse. So it's interesting that it's a bitter water, and it's having to do with jealousy, and we know that there's a bitterness that that comes with that. So, and the priest shall make her swear and say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and you have not turned aside to uncleanness under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you have turned aside under your husband's authority, and you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then the priest shall make the woman swear with the oath of the curse, and he shall say to the woman, Yahuwah make you a curse and an oath among your people, when Yahuwah makes your thigh waste away and your belly swell. And this water that causes the curse shall go into your inward parts, and make your belly swell and your thigh waste away. And the woman shall say, Amen, Amen. And the priest shall write these curses in a book, and shall wipe them off into the bitter water, and shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings the curse, and the water that brings the curse shall enter her to become bitter. And the priest shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, and shall wave the offering before Yahuwah, and bring it to the slaughter place, to the altar. And the priest shall take a hand filled with the offering, as its remembrance offering, and burn it on the altar, and afterward make the woman drink the water. And when he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, if she has defiled herself and has committed a trespass against her husband, that the water that brings the curse shall enter her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thigh shall waste away, and the woman shall become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be clear and shall conceive children. This is the Torah of jealousy. When a wife turns aside under her husband's authority and defiles herself, or when a spirit of jealousy comes upon a man and he becomes jealous of his wife, then he shall make the woman stand before Yahuwah, and the priest shall do to her all this Torah. And the man shall be clear from crookedness, but the woman bear her crookedness. Wow. So this is a law that will either expose the sin of the woman, and cause the man to be justified in his jealousy, or it will expose that the man's jealousy was not called for, because the woman did not turn away from him. So this is a law that is in the Torah. Okay, so it's dealing with a more of a possessiveness, or a protectiveness, or fear of loss. Okay, so we see the contrast here, or similarities and differences. And this is the context we usually see jealousy dealing with covenant relationships and those type of things. So jealousy deals with something that you rightfully possess, that is yours, that belongs to you. Your spouse is yours. We as a people belong to the Most High. So when it's something that belongs to you that's being trespassed upon, this is when jealousy rises up. This is in opposition to envy, or in contrast to envy, because envy is when you desire something that belongs to somebody else. So when dealing with envy, this is a want, it's a desire to possess something that someone else has. Okay, so this is, you're looking upon what somebody else has and you're desiring that. This is connected to covetousness, where the scriptures tell us do not covet another man's house, another man's, wife, another man's, you know, possessions. You know what I mean? So we're not supposed to possess, to desire to possess what belongs to somebody else. So that is to covet, and that's what envy is connected to. So when you're envying what belongs to somebody else, it's going to cause you to covet it. Okay, you desire to have what you don't have, and what somebody else possesses, and you're looking on that thing longingly, whether it be a person, whether it be a person that you desire, whether it be a possession or thing that you desire, whether it be the attention that they get, whether it could be a immaterial thing that someone else is receiving. Somebody may be whatever the case may be, maybe their giftings, their opportunities, whatever it is, something that you don't have that they have, and you begin to covet it because you want that thing. So it could be two things in this context. You can either covet the thing where your concern is not really about the person. You're not really thinking about the person that possesses it. You're just like, man, I really want a car like they have, or man, I really want, that's the house that I want. It could be that you're just coveting the thing, or it could be an envy that is turned towards the person who has the thing, that causes you to envy and hate that person because they are possessing that thing. Okay? Alright, so and this all can lead to, when you think about somebody's coveting a person's house or car, they may carjack that person and kill them. And it's nothing about the person, but they want that thing so bad that they will allow that desire to burn up inside of them, and they will kill the person to possess the thing. Okay, and that happens in religious world too. Where somebody is jealous of a position that somebody else has because they think that it's taking attention away from them, or they're envious of some accolades or something that somebody has been entitled, or whatever the case may be, and now they'll seek out to try to backbite and talk against this person, to destroy them and to bring them down so that they can get that attention back on themselves. This can happen in every realm of life, in families, at the workplace, okay, in our community, amongst close friends, amongst enemies, whoever, and we'll get a little bit more into that. But let's look at 2 Samuel chapter 11, and we'll look at where coveting leads to murder. And this is dealing with David and Bathsheba. Okay, so in chapter 11, verse 1, it says, it came to be at the turn of the year, at the time kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. Okay, and it came to be at evening time that David rose up from his bed and walked about on the roof to the king's house, the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very good to look at. And David sent and asked about the woman. And one said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? So it was told to David that this woman belongs to someone. That this is somebody's wife. Okay, so David was aware of this. All right. It says, and David sent messengers to fetch her. Okay, so he didn't care. And she came to him, and he lay with her, for she was cleansing herself from her uncleanness. And she returned to her house. So it was after her time of her time of uncleanness, her cycle, and she returned to her house. Um, and it says in verse 5, the woman conceived. So Bathsheba got pregnant from this encounter and sent and informed Dawid and said, I am pregnant. Then Dawid sent to Joab, and now Dawid begins to scheme because now there's a problem. So he's taken he's coveted this woman that belongs to another man, and now he's laid with her, and now she's going to conceive a child, so it's going to be exposed. And so Dawid said, sent to Joab, says, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to Dawid. And Uriah came to him, and Dawid asked Joab how he was doing, and how the people were doing, and how the fighting was going. And Dawid said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. And Uriah went out from the king's house, and a gift from the king followed him. But Uriah lay down at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his master, and did not go down to his house. And they informed Dawid, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house. Okay, so Uriah didn't go, he didn't go home. He was expecting, Dawid was trying to send Uriah home so that he could be with his wife, so that she could, he could think that this, child that she's pregnant with is from him. That was his plan. And it said, they informed Dawid, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house. So Dawid said to Uriah, did you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? And Uriah said to Dawid, the ark and Yisrael and Yehuda are dwelling in booths, and my master Joab and the servants of my master are encamped in the open fields. And I should go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? As you live and as your being lives, let me not do this. So Uriah had some righteousness about him. He didn't want to be up there laying with his wife while everybody else is, encamped out in the field and, handling business. So verse 12 it says, Dawid said to Uriah, remain here tonight also, and tomorrow I'll let you go. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. And Dawid called him, and he ate and drank before him, and he made him drunk. So now Dawid's like, let me get him drunk, and maybe I can send him home. And he says, and that evening he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his master, but he did not go down to his house. And it came to be in the morning that Dawid wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter saying, listen, I tried all these things. It's not working, so listen. Set Uriah in the front of the toughest battle, and you shall turn away from him, and he shall be stricken and shall die. And it came to be, as Joab watched the city, that he appointed Uriah to the place where he knew there were brave men. And the men of the city came out and fought with Joab. And some of the people of the servants of Dawid fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. And Joab sent and reported to Dawid all the events of the battle, and commanded the messenger, saying, when you have finished reporting all the events of the battle to the king, then it shall be, if the king's wrath rises, and he says to you, why did you go so near to the city when you fought? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Who struck Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal? Was it not a woman who threw an upper millstone from the wall so that he died? Why did you go near the wall? Then you shall say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead. And the messenger went and came and reported to Dawid all with which Joab had sent him. And the messenger said to Dawid, the men have been mighty against us. It came out to us in the field, but we drove them back as far as the entrance of the gate. The archers shot from the wall at your servants, and some of the servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead. And Dawid said to the messenger, say to Joab, do not let this matter be evil in your eyes, for the sword devours one as well as another. So he acted like this. So Dawid just sent this thing. He got him sending a message back to him. I mean, all this deceit, as if he doesn't know what's happening. And he's basically saying, well, listen, uh, people die. Don't be mad about it. Don't be upset about it. For the sword devours one as well as another. Strengthen your attack against the city and overthrow it and strengthen them. So all this deception, he done killed this man. And it says, and the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, and she lamented for her husband. And when her mourning was over, Dawid sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the deed that Dawid had done was evil in the eyes of Yahuwah. And we know that Yahuwah sends Nathan to bring, to rebuke him for this, basically bring this to his attention, because Dawid is in denial and is tripping. So, and he ends up The Most High doesn't take his wife. I mean, doesn't take his life. He doesn't take David's life, but he ends up causing his son to perish. So there is a death that comes out of this, and there's a lot that comes to David's house because of this. So justice does come out of this situation, and we see that this envy, this covetousness, leads to death for Uriah, death for David's son, and more that happened throughout his house, throughout his family, his household. Okay, as a result of this. All right. So attached to that covetousness, we also see that there was a selfish ambition. There was a self-seeking. Okay, it was it's something that envy and covetousness is about self. It's about what we desire, what we want beyond the will of the Father. We place ourselves where it's something that we desire, we want. We have our selfish ambition and we pursue something, to the end. And that's what the weed did. It was a selfish act. Okay. It was selfish. We envy things because we're focused on our own agendas and our own desires of what we want to achieve, what we want to do, how we want to be seen, versus putting our focus on the will of the Most High. And that's what it really boils down to. So let's turn to the book of James. We're going to look at chapter 3 and chapter 4. And I like James because James, he kind of just gets right to the point with things and cuts right to the heart of things. So in chapter 3, he begins in chapter 3 talking to teachers, saying that teachers are going to receive a greater judgment. Okay, and he begins to talk about the mouth and how the tongue is a great evil, and how we have to control our mouths. And then he goes into, when we get to verse 13, he says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good behavior, his works in meekness of wisdom." Okay? But if you have bitter jealousy, bitter envy, and self-seeking or selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast against and lie against the truth. This is not the wisdom coming down from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and self-seeking are, there's confusion and every foul deed. But the wisdom from above is first clean, then peaceable, gentle, ready to obey, filled with compassion and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So he starts off here saying that there's a wisdom that's above, but then there's a wisdom from below. What we just read, what the weed did, that was wise, what he did to rectify that situation. However, it was not a wisdom that came down from above. It was earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Because where jealousy and self-seeking are, there is confusion and every foul deed. Where there's envy and selfish ambition, there's confusion and every foul deed. So he operated in that sense, in a wisdom that was wicked. It was earthly, it was demonic, it was not spiritual. Okay, so, and that came from that envy, that covetousness, then that selfish ambition, that self-seeking. Okay, and that's what we see. So in chapter 4 it says, "Where do fightings and strivings come from among you, Yisrael? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members? You desire and do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight and you do not possess because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures." Okay? So he's saying, why is there so much fighting and striving among you, Yisrael? you know, Jealousy and envy and hatred and covetousness are some underlying heart issues that keep us as a nation divided. It keeps our communities divided. It keeps us divided today in every realm of our life. We see this it started with our forefathers, and it divided them, and it caused murder and confusion amongst them. And the same thing today, like we talk about crabs in a barrel, like nobody can make it up because we're pulling each other down. Whether it's financially, we won't help each other because we're envious and jealous, and we won't give to each other. We take what another person has. We live our life based off of trying to keep up with somebody else because we envy what people who have certain things that we deem to be successful are putting out there. We have all these issues. We hate each other. Okay, we murder each other based off of jealousy and envy, based off of our own selfish agendas that we have going forth. It's a major issue amongst our people. It's a hard issue that we have to, uh, as believers, we still flow in these type of things. We haven't allowed the Most High to purge our hearts of this particular vein of wickedness. Okay, so where do fightings and strivings come from among you? Why is all this fighting and striving, and we striving for things that we shouldn't be? We're distracted. We're arguing. We can't get along. Where does it come from? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members? All these pleasures that we're seeking, right? So you desire and do not have. You desire things and your desire is not being met. And why? Instead, it's because your desire is not being met, you murder. You're envious. You're still not able to get what you want. And you're not getting it because you don't ask God. And when you do ask God, when you are being spiritual and praying for these things, you're not getting it because you're asking in order to spend it on your own pleasures. You're not asking because of the will of Yah. You're not concerned about the will of Yah. You're asking because you want these things for your own desires, your own pleasure. You're focused on yourself. Okay? So what do we do about this, right? What do we do about this? This is something that we are recipients of. We are, we say, okay, we got haters and uh, all these type of things, whatever. So we have people that hate us and that are envious of us because of the favor of man and the favor of Yah that's on our lives. And then we find ourselves in a position where we are envious of others because of things that they possess that we desire. We find ourselves hating others. So we find ourselves, if you're honest, on either side of this. Okay, so as spirit-filled believers and followers of Messiah Yahushua, we're called to be able to have to minister to people who are afflicted by the spirit and by the things connected to it. And then we're also called to keep our hearts pure from being defiled by these things. So how do we do that? Okay, how do we do that? What do we do when we identify these feelings, these thoughts, these inclinations rising up within us? Okay, what do we do? We have to confess it, right? It said, what did it say? It said in chapter 3, it said, if you have, in verse 14, it says, if you have bitter jealousy, bitter envy, and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast against it, and do not lie against the truth. So do not boast in it, okay? But also don't lie against the truth. Don't lie about it. Confess it. We have to confess. We have to identify these things when they're in us. And this is one of the hardest things for us to do sometimes, is to identify when we're feeling something. That feeling rises up. As soon as that burn on the inside, as soon as that feeling, as soon as that evil eye comes up, we have to identify that thing and confess it to the Most High and admit it to ourselves right then and right there. And if it's somebody that you have in your life that you can confess it to out loud, for another believer that can pray for you or whatever, confess it to them. Expose that thing. Okay, so that it does not become a bitter root growing up inside of you. Okay, confess it to the Most High, identify it, right? And then, then get to the root of where it's coming from. Where does envy come from? Envy, a lot of times, is rooted in insecurity. Okay, it's rooted in insecurity. We're not secure about our position, or we're not secure about our future. So we get anxious when we see somebody encroaching upon our territory that we think is our territory, but it's really not. It's really not about us. It's about the Most High, so nobody can take what is rightfully ours, and but we feel insecure. We begin to be fearful instead of having faith in what the Most High is doing in us, and where He's taking us, we begin to get insecure and fearful and anxious. And so we have to solidify and secure our trust in the Most High Yah, and 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 nurture that so that it overrides and plucks out that root of envy. Perfect love casts out fear, and when we're secure in the Most High's love for us, um, or a person's love for us, if this is related to a relationship or something, it casts out fear. But ultimately, the Most High's love and intentions towards us, when we're secure in that, it'll cast out that fear that causes you to be jealous or envious, in that thing that nurtures into hate. Okay, so discontentment is a root of envy. All right, we become discontent with where we are because we see somebody else, and now we're envious, and now we're seeking and striving towards something that was never intended for us to seek and strive for. Raquel and Leah. So Raquel is desiring something before its time. The Most High had intentions for allowing Leah, because she was unloved, to be first to birth the children. And Raquel couldn't be patient through that process, and so she's just getting ready to just die, because she's become impatient with this process, right? We see Sarah, who, we see these different people who are going outside of Yah's timing, right? When she went and tried to make the promise come through Ishmael, through her handmaiden sleeping with Abraham, versus waiting for Isaac, right? So it was a discontentment that came there. So discontentment could cause envy. All right, that discontentment can lead to envy. All right, so we have to figure out: are we discontent with where the Most High has us? Or are we in a place where we're self-seeking? We're seeking to fulfill something ourself outside of the timing and the will and the purpose of the Most High. Envy is always focused on us. It's a wrong focus. Our eyes are on someone else more than it should be. We're watching somebody else more than we should be. And ultimately we're thinking about ourselves more than we should be. Our focus should be on the Most High Yah and His purpose and His time, and trusting in that, and not allowing the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life to consume us. So envy is thinking about our flesh, our needs, it's thinking about us. We focus on Yah, focus on His will and plan, and then if we are able to have true and genuine love and focus on the person, if it's a person that is within our circle, in our family, because people are, mothers and daughters have been jealous of each other, brothers, sisters, even spouses, can be jealous of something, a part of their spouse that is a weakness for them. In our assemblies, which is highly, in our assemblies. Okay, if you really have a love for the person, then you're going to want to celebrate them in their success, and celebrate them in what Yah is doing in them, and you'll have a love towards that, and it'll be genuine, and that will wipe out those feelings of envy and those feelings. If you truly celebrate what the Most High is doing in somebody else's life, and the favor that you see, then that real genuine love will wipe out, even if you have some feelings of envy that rise up. So a person's not wicked just because they have these feelings. We all struggle with these feelings because of our past, because of how we've grown up, because of the circumstances we're in. These are things that rise up within us, and it's just a matter of identifying it and plucking it up, and not nurturing it, not allowing it to take root in you. And if it does, plucking it up, and not allowing it to grow up, and defile yourself and defile the people around you. Okay, it's like a weed that grows up, and defiles the crop. It chokes out the good things, so don't allow the good things to be choked out by this weed of envy and bitterness and selfish ambition and jealousy. It turns into hate, and it causes you to cause death to come upon something, whether it's something in you or something in the people around you. Okay, this is something that's killing our community. So we have to be able to identify these things in ourselves. Then we have to be a people that keep from triggering these things in other people, because sometimes we like to boast in things. Like Yosef, we don't know. Yosef was 17 when he shared his dreams with his brothers, right? But we don't know if he was being boastful or if he was just being excited and zealous and saying these things and sharing it. But sometimes we boast in things and try to be a stumbling block to our brothers and sisters, and try to make ourselves look all big and like we're something, to trigger jealousy in other people because it makes us feel like we're somebody or something. So we have to keep, as a set apart people, from trying to trigger this jealousy in other people, and cease from being a stumbling block. We have to love our brothers and sisters enough to be wise in what we share, how we share it, when we share it. Be sensitive to what's going on with another person. The Most High will show you. You can't be, it's just like, you can only do but so much, but a lot of times we do become a stumbling block in this way. So love your brother and sister enough to not be a stumbling block in this manner. Okay, so then also, what do we do when we identify someone else does feel this way towards us? How do we minister to somebody else that is dealing with this, whether it's towards us or, just in general? We have to be willing to pray for the person. We have to. It's not like the world says, oh, they hating on me. They jealous. They just jealous. That's all. Okay, maybe they are. Maybe they have a lot of things going on within them that they are jealous. And they are envious. How do you have to have a love in your heart to pray for them. Don't be around somebody that's maliciously, coming towards you to destroy you. But sometimes your best friend will be jealous of you. Okay, you pray for them. Pray with them. Be a person that somebody can confess that to you, and you can pray together. You know, and we have to be willing to confess these type of dark things that we don't like to talk about or admit. So that there can be freedom and deliverance, and these things can stop killing our community as a people. This is the type of thing that we don't like to talk about unless we're talking about, how somebody else is going through it. But we won't talk about our feelings of jealousy and envy, and most of us experience it. I know I've experienced it a lot of times in life, and I've had to allow the Most High to purge that from my heart and to identify it. I've had to confess that to people before, so it's something that we go through in our human experience. So we have to have love for each other. Love covers a multitude of sins. So be a person that somebody can confess to you, and you can pray with them, and be able to minister to somebody, to deal with their heart root issues. Create environments in your assemblies, in your community, in your family, in your relationships, where these type of things can be talked about and dealt with in a way that's not demeaning, and that's not like attacking. I've heard this message taught in churches where they're just like, yeah, these haters, and they jealous, and and everybody's like, yeah, this and that, and it's just in a way where, how could somebody get healed? Because most people who have haters, yeah, you may have people that's hating on you and jealous of you, but you have somebody that you are jealous of and are hating on also, more than likely. So how do we deal with both sides of this coin? We have to be a people of love that flows in the spirit of the Most High, that deliverance and healing is a regular occurrence to us and with us. So I pray that the Most High will minister to us and deliver us from these things, and bring healing, and allow us to nurture loving communities where we can talk about these topics, where we are willing to go before the Most High and bear our hearts on these things and get true healing and deliverance, so that we can really love each other, because there's no reason for there to be so much hate and murder and backbiting and lack of, in selfishness, lack of giving, selfish ambition, all these things that are keeping us from being able to move forward, and to have what the Most High really desires for us to have, in us providing collectively for each other, whether it be with physical things or emotional things. It really should be so much more love amongst us as a people, if we're really walking out this word. So we have to remove these things from our midst. And I pray that the Most High will has ministered to you in this, and that He continues to minister to us as a people, so that we can get healed and have love towards each other, that is genuine and that is piercing and convicting and life-changing, and love that is a comfort in a safe place in the midst of the true murderous jealousy that should only exist out in the world. So that we'll be a safe haven, and they'll know us by our love towards each other. So thank you for listening to this Torah portion, dealing with yourself and this issue of what happens on the other side of favor, which is dealing with envy and jealousy and hate. So I pray that the Most High will minister to you in this, and that healing would go forth for you if you are one that is struggling with this, and that he would pierce your heart and bring you to a place of understanding of what's going on within you, and that he would heal you and cause people to be around you that that will nurture that healing, even for deep rooted things that go back to your childhood, and that go back to, painful things, that he would uproot those things, and that he would bring healing, bring shalom, wholeness to you, and give you the love and wisdom if you are dealing with another person who's dealing with this, which that you can minister the right words to them that will bring healing to them, so that the Most High Yah will be glorified in our relationships and in our assemblies. So all praises to the Most High Yah. I pray that this word was a blessing, and I will see you in the next video. Shalom to you, family.